The following segment is sponsored by Xterra Incorporated, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol XAG.V. Xterra plans to become a mid-tier producer of silver and base metals through the development of its Bilbao deposit located in the central Mexican mineral belt in the state of Zacatecas, as well as through additional exploration and acquisition opportunities. Find Xterra on the web at xterra.ca. Join me for a conversation with a frequent guest of the show, David Morgan, the Silver Guru, an expert on money, metals, and mining, also a lecturer and an author. Mr. Morgan has written Get the Skinny on Silver Investing, available on Amazon.com. His website is themorganreport.com. David, welcome back to the program.
Great to be back with you, Ellis.
Now, we had an announcement last week that the Fed was going to continue quantitative easing, and then we saw a rally at the end of that particular day, and then the sell-off continued. It seems that no sort of Fed announcement or continued mass printing of currency is going to give us the kind of continued upswing in the market that we used to get when these sort of announcements were made. Are those days just gone?
Well, it's getting tougher and tougher to predict. What I would say is, first of all, I was awakened by Bloomberg on the day of the announcement. Prior to the announcement, they asked me what I thought. I said, I really don't think they will taper, but if they do, I said it'd be monumental, even if it's only like 10 or 15 billion like a lot of us thought might take place. And the reason I said monumental is it basically would signal to the markets that the Fed really believes that they have things under control and that they can start tightening up their monetary policy. Of course, that's not what took place. Bernanke said now very clearly that they're going to let the data determine what kind of tightening they'll do based on the unemployment rate and the inflation rate. It's basically begging for higher official inflation. Of course, anyone that goes out and pays for groceries or drives a car around or pays for insurance or anything like that knows there's much higher inflation than the official government figures. So coming back, the rally, which really was quite an enthusiastic rally, got a lot of us prepared that maybe this was it, that we're going to move up and we'd see some follow-through. I'm just too old and seasoned. Although I was excited for the day, I just wanted to wait and watch market activity for a few more days. And obviously, as you said, pretty much all the gains that were made on that announcement have fallen back a few days later. So now we ask, well, what's really going on? One, I would say that the intermediate bottom is still in. I could be proven wrong for that to happen. You'd have to see the $18 level pierce to the downside in silver, and you'd have to say, I think it's 1,100 and change in gold. And I think those will hold. But what this means is that we've got a lot more waiting, I guess, to take place before we really see significance. The problem with forecasting or timing these things is not only is there intervention in these markets, which makes it difficult, but the other thing is the reality that there's black swans out there. I mean, there could be an event that takes place and all of a sudden you see gold and silver up limit day after day for 2 or 3 or 4 days in a row. I'm not forecasting that, but you have to keep that in mind. You have to keep that in the back of your mind because there are so many uncertainties out there, and now there's really a push or a standoff that's getting more and more deliberate in the mainstream financial press, which is something we talked about on one of the earlier shows, where you've got the Anglo-American axis vying for power versus basically the BRICS. And Putin really kind of put Obama in his place here with this Syria thing. What does that have to do with monetary policy? Well, it has a lot to do with it from the aspect that it's a power struggle. It's a power struggle politically because all money is really created out of central banks. So if you've got an Asian or BRICS consortium with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa on one side and the Anglo Empire on the other side, which is basically the UK and the United States, now you have a lot of pushing back and forth. And really at this point it looks as if the BRICS kind of have the upper hand. And there's a lot of people that are getting out of the dollar one way or another, meaning nation states that are trading amongst themselves in their own currencies. So it's far from over. I think the underlying fundamentals really make a strong case that gold and silver will continue their move higher. But it is very discouraging when you see a big pow like we saw and then see it erased, within a couple of days.
I think you probably already previously answered this question, David, but do you expect any October surprises? Do we usually have them? I can't recall.
Well, I think we talked about that a couple shows ago. I somewhat do expect an October surprise, and it'd be more on the equity side. I mean, any measure that you use that's substantive on the stock market generally, it's way overvalued. there aren't good underlying fundamentals. Certainly, if you go on a company-by-company basis, there are some that are heavily cash and doing quite well. But the general equity market is overextended. It's going on vapors. There's lots of cases to be made that it's ready for a fall, a substantial one. October can be very hairy for the stock market, so it wouldn't surprise me to see a sell-off in the general equity market sometime during the month of October. And the further that, coming back to the big rally that we had on the Fed's announcement of not tapering, we saw gold up, I think it was 4.5%, silver's up about 6%, and the Dow was only up 100 points. I mean, it was really, it turned around and started going up, but certainly not to the percentage level that the metals did. And as the metals sold off, the Dow actually sold off as well. So it's one of those back to kind of all markets moving together for a while. It's hard to get a clear leader in this market. And what that really shows, if your objective is there's confusion, there's uncertainty, and people really don't know where to put their money.
We'll be right back. The Ellis Martin Report is sponsored by Xterra Incorporated, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol XAG.V. Xterra is a Toronto-based resource company, and their primary project is the Bilbao silver, zinc, lead, copper deposit situated in the Panfillo Natera district of Zacatecas, Mexico, approximately 50 kilometers south of the state capital of Zacatecas, where Xterra is currently completing a bankable feasibility study. Between the company's Bilbao, Laguna, and Panfillo projects, Xterra has a resource of 100 million silver equivalent ounces, including 33 million ounces silver in 43101 compliant resource. Zacatecas is a well-known mining district with infrastructure in place. Mining opportunities are both open pit and underground. There are no significant environmental issues, and there is an available local workforce there, as well as goods and services for development of the projects. You can find a full investor prospectus on Xterra's website. Just log on to xterra.ca or find their logo and click through on the homepage of our website, ellismartinreport.com. And we're back. When we see gains in these junior mining stocks, and we've been seeing it for a while, there's usually a sell-off on gains or a sell-off on news. And where I'm headed with this is penny stock market makers. They're not helping at all, are they?
Well, they're not. There's some large short positions in some really good companies, as you know. But I did do an update for our members a few days ago, and what I noted in that update was that there's higher bottoms. And vis-a-vis, I think it was the HUI and I believe another index, I looked at two of them, both indicating that it's very subtle. But nonetheless, it looks as if the bottom is in the mining equities. I know they're extremely low. I know they're very undervalued to where they should be, and all that I agree with. But nonetheless, you have to look for these subtle clues. And the subtle clue is that they're making higher lows. And that's an indication. And normally, the equity market in the mining sector does precede a rally in the metal itself. So I'm still pretty convinced that the bottom is in on a intermediate term basis. But again, it looks like it's going to take more time than any of us want to take place, with the caveat that, there is something out there, black swan-wise, that could ignite these markets, and, no one can forecast that.
And we just don't know what that could be at all, do we?
Well, it could be a lot of things. I mean, we could talk for hours on the possibilities, but one is potentially around the debt markets, the bond market. Bernanke basically said we're not going to tape. I mean, that's a very clear signal to the other nation states that the United States has no intent of having any kind of sound monetary policy. In other words, they're basically saying we're going to print to infinity. Well, if you print to infinity, that means that the currency goes to zero. That's what it means. So there might be action on another nation state that says it's very clear what the U.S. is going to do. They're going to do nothing. They're going to do nothing to rein in this ridiculous amount of monetizing or easing the zero interest rate policy forever until they get their unemployment where they want. So this causes great deal of consternation in other nation states because it affects them, because the dollar is still the global reserve currency. So how long are they going to take it? And the answer is, I don't know, but they've already meaning the BRICS primarily, have made great moves and strides to protect themselves, and primarily what they've done is they have usurped the dollar. They've gone outside of the dollar domain to make settlements amongst themselves, and this will continue. So there is a big power play, as we talked about earlier, and how, when, and we know why, but how and when it's going to unfold, really no one can forecast.
Well, this is the sort of thing you write about each month and more on the Morgan Report. tell our new listeners how they can subscribe.
Yeah, just go to themorganreport.com and check out the website. You can get on our free Twitter feed, our free YouTube channel, or our free weekly e-alert letter. And I want to say that the next month, I'm working as we speak almost on why I believe that the major commodity cycle is not over. And I think it's a very sound argument. So there's a lot of people out there that, gold has peaked, silver's peaked, the commodities have peaked. It's over, it's downhill, should have got out or whatever they're thinking. I'm going to build the case, and I think it isn't airtight, but almost. I'm going to make the strongest case I can on why the commodity cycle is not over. Not to say that China isn't, overheated and all the other arguments that you hear, but I'm going to make a very solid case why the major secular bull market commodities is far from over.
We look forward to reading that. David, thanks so much for joining me today on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I've been speaking with analyst and newsletter writer David Morgan. His website is themorganreport.com. Listen to the segment again on the podcast page of our website, ellismartinreport.com. The preceding segment has been sponsored by Xterra Incorporated, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol XAG.V. Xterra plans to become a mid-tier producer of silver and base metals through the development of its Bilbao deposit located in the central Mexican mineral belt in the state of Zacatecas, as well as through additional exploration and acquisition opportunities. Find Xterra on the web at xterra.ca.